It was 3 in the morning. The shadows of darkness had covered the entire room, but sleep had probably crept into the walls and doors of this house. Saima was sitting by the door, her eyes swollen, her hands showing signs of old wounds, and her 3-month-old daughter in her lap. A voice came from outside the room. I said I wouldn't give her a place in the house if a boy wasn't born. This voice belonged to her husband Bilal. And Saima's heart had already broken 1,000 times before that sentence. The door opened loudly. Bilal was drunk, belt in hand, hatred in his eyes. This girl, this misfortune. You ruined my life. Saima sobbed. She's your daughter too, Bilal. Bilal, without wasting a moment, put the belt on Saima's waist. The clock on the wall of the room seemed to have stopped. Saima hugged the girl to her chest. The tears were not stopping, but she did not scream, she just endured it silently. The next day, when she was making breakfast in the kitchen, her mother-in-law, Rashida Begum, came forward. Our family does not have daughters, and what will this mean girl do to our house? Saima bent down and grabbed her mother-in-law's feet. Excuse me, mother, I am only a wife. The birth of a daughter is Allah's command. Rashida Begum dragged her feet and said, Why should Allah forgive you if you do not take the name of Allah? You have come to this house as a curse. Bilal is also worried because of you. He wants to divorce you. The plate fell from Saima's hand. Divorce. Was it such a mistake? Only the birth of a daughter. That night, Saima held her daughter to her chest and sat against the wall. Tears kept flowing. The heart was saying, Oh God, if this is my test, then give me courage too. But the spectacle of fate did not end here. The door opened. Bilal came. Mother has said that I will divorce you. The lawyer is coming tomorrow. Be ready. Saima, looking at her daughter, said only this. Will this girl ever be able to see her father's love? Bilal closed the door tightly. Saima was very quiet the next morning. She didn't cry, she didn't say anything. She just sat in a corner of the room, as if she had buried herself in the dirt. She was holding the baby girl in her lap, but there was fear in her eyes. Fear of that day, when she would really be thrown out of this house. Bilal came in the afternoon, holding an envelope. Keep this paper, it will be signed tomorrow. I need relief from a burden like yours. Saima took the envelope in her hand, but didn't open it. Her hands were shaking. She had turned to stone after hearing the word divorce, but her heart was trembling for her daughter. Her mother-in-law's voice came from the kitchen. Son, get rid of her quickly. Nothing good is going to happen to us with this misfortune. Bilal looked at his mother, shook his head and said, I have been doing this until today only by listening to you. That's it. This game is over. That evening, when Saima went out to get water, an old woman from the neighborhood was standing by the door. Daughter, what happened? Why are your eyes so red? Saima wanted to tell her everything for a moment, but then looked away. It's nothing, mother, the smoke in your eyes has gone. The old woman sighed, as if she had understood everything, and said, Girls like you who truly care from the heart are the ones who get hurt the most. That night, when Saima was putting the girl to bed, her late father's voice rang in her ears. Daughter, no matter what the world says, don't give up your self-control. And at that moment Saima made a decision. She would accept the divorce, but she would keep her daughter with her no matter what. The next day, Bilal brought the lawyer. Here is our family lawyer, sign the divorce papers today. The lawyer looked at Saima and said, Bibi, if you have anything to say, tell me, I have come to listen. Saima raised her eyes for the first time and said, I have only one thing to say. My daughter will go with me. Take whatever you want. But don't take my daughter away from me. Bilal shouted angrily. She is my child. I will go to court. Saima said in a low voice. If you had fulfilled your duty as a father, I would never have said such a thing. But you didn't even dare to look at her face. She was raised only by her mother's lap, not by her father's scorn. The lawyer looked at Bilal, then folded the paper. This case will go to court. But the truth always comes out. That night, Saima was sitting next to her daughter in her room. For the first time, she kissed her daughter on the forehead and said, "Even if the world rejects us, I am your mother and you are my courage." It was morning, but the darkness of night was still in Saima's heart. The atmosphere in the house had become even quieter than before, as if everything had been shaken. She was sitting with her daughter in her lap, and was praying in her heart, "O Allah, keep me alive for my daughter, give me courage." At that moment, Rashida Begum came into the room with quick steps, and threw a bag in front of Saima. "These are your clothes. Get out of this house. You ruined my son's life. You brought him neither honor nor an heir." Saima's eyes filled with tears, but still she bowed and said, "Mother, I am going. I have just one last request, let my daughter go with me." Rashida Begum spat and said, "We don't even need that unfortunate girl. Take her, who has to be taken." Bilal was standing by the door, watching the silent spectacle. She was shaking her head at everything her mother said, as if her conscience had died. Saima quietly picked up the bag, held the baby to her chest, and stepped out of the doorway of the house, where she had once crossed the threshold of Suhag. The sun outside was bright, the path unknown, but Saima's steps had the strength of a mother. She reached the door of the same old woman in the neighborhood who had comforted her yesterday. She said in a low voice, "Mother, give me one night, then I will go wherever I am told." The old woman called Saima inside, her eyes moist. "Daughter, the door is only made of wood. Don't close your heart. This house is yours as long as you want." Saima thanked her. That night, she held the baby in her lap, and looking at the ceiling she said, "Oh God, I was broken. But I am learning to live for my daughter. You are a witness, I will not give up." On the other hand, there was silence in Bilal's heart. He was sitting in the room, scrolling through his mobile, when a call came. "Sir, a notice has come from the court, the hearing is next week." Bilal said in shock. "So soon?" The lawyer's voice came. "Saima has applied to be given full custody of the baby, and a case of torture should also be filed against you. If evidence is found, you may even go to jail." The mobile fell from Bilal's hand. This was the moment when Bilal felt afraid of his actions for the first time. But now time had passed. Saima, who had been at his mercy until yesterday, was today asking him for justice. It was her first day in court. It seemed crowded, but Saima's eyes were searching for only one face, the answer to her truth, the answer to her suffering. Bilal's face. Outside the court she stood dressed simply, holding her baby girl to her chest, and in her heart all the words that for years had only come out of her eyes, never from her tongue. The lawyer motioned to her. "Bibi, today is an important day. Whatever you have to say it truthfully and completely. Silence is the enemy now." As soon as the case began in court, Bilal's demeanor was surprisingly carefree. He told the judge in plain words, "My wife took away the peace of the house. She used to disobey my mother, and brought disgrace to the house by giving birth to a girl." The judge nodded seriously and looked at Saima. "What do you have to say?" Saima was silent for a moment, then spoke in a low voice. "My soul was only punished for giving birth to a daughter. I did not do anything rude, nor did I use my tongue. I just endured everything that a woman probably should not endure." The judge asked, "Do you have any witnesses or evidence?" Saima rolled up the sleeves of her clothes a little. The burn marks, the hot water thrown by Bilal, the marks of the belt, and the pain in her eyes that was much deeper than words. The court fell silent. Bilal glanced away for a moment, as if he were ashamed for the first time. The judge adjourned the proceedings but said clearly, "This case is not just about divorce, it is also about self-respect." Coming out of the court, Saima stood silently, and she felt that today she had left not in a court, but rather having pronounced the verdict within herself. When Bilal sat in the car, Rashida Begum said angrily, "What was the need to be a part of this drama? I would have refused outright." Bilal remained silent. His heart was saying, maybe Saima was right. Maybe I really broke a mother, not a wife. That same night, Saima took the girl in her arms and said, "My daughter, today I have fulfilled my first duty as your mother. I will give you a world where women are not weak, but strong like mothers." The next court appearance had arrived. Saima looked very different today. She was not in the traditional burqa, but in a simple but clean white shalwar kameez, her hair tied up and her eyes raised. The girl was with her, not in her lap, but holding her hand, silently feeling the strength of the woman people called weak. In the court, the judge opened the files and said, "We saw clear evidence of physical violence in the previous hearing. Today, if the defendant has any evidence, he should present it." Bilal's lawyer said hesitantly, "We have no evidence to deny physical violence, but we want to prove that Saima is mentally weak and is not capable of raising a child." Saima's heart seemed to have been stolen once again. Now fingers were being raised at her character. Her ability as a mother was being questioned, but she did not give up. He took out a slip, which contained the statement of the old woman of the neighborhood. "I have seen Saima live with her daughter with patience and love with my own eyes. I cannot raise any question about her being a mother." The judge read the slip carefully, then asked Saima, "If you get full custody of the daughter, where will you live? Is there financial support?" Saima said without lowering her eyes, "I have bought a sewing machine. I am living in a room in Ammaji's house. I can fight the world for my daughter, but I cannot bow down to anyone." Silence fell in the courtroom. Sweat broke out on Bilal's forehead. His heart kept screaming from within. Is this the same Saima? The one who used to tremble at everything? The judge issued the order. The court grants temporary custody of the child to Saima Bibi, and the permanent decision will be made at the next hearing. The court ended. When Saima left the courtroom, there were no tears in her eyes but peace. Standing at the door, she looked at the sky and said in her heart, "Oh Allah, my test is ongoing. But now I will fight the battle of a mother every day. Victory will also be mine. And prayer too." After leaving the court with a temporary victory, Saima bought a small swing for her daughter for the first time. This swing was not expensive, but it held Saima's entire dream. A safe childhood, a home like a mother's lap, and the love that Bilal's behavior had taken away from the girl. Ammaji decorated a small room for her in the corner of the house, where Saima would work on the sewing machine all day, and lull her daughter to sleep in the evening. But this peace could not last long. One day Bilal suddenly came to that street. No court notice, no phone call. Just got out of the car and knocked on the door. Saima opened the door, and there was the person in front of her, a glimpse of whom she used to forget her heartbeat. But today there was no passion, no trembling in his eyes. Only protection for his daughter. Bilal said in a cold tone, "I have come to see the girl. I am the father, it is my right." Saima held the door. "The right was lost the day you called the girl born from my womb unlucky." Bilal was silent for a moment, then said, "The court has given permission, right?" Saima brought the girl and stood her at the door, and went inside herself. "Look, but only to the door. My child's heart can no longer tolerate your behavior." Bilal bent down and looked at his daughter. The little girl closed her eyes, as if she did not want to recognize that face. For the first time, there was a shadow of shame in Bilal's eyes. "Why is she looking away from me?" Saima's voice came from inside. "Because childhood has taught her. A father is not a father just by name." Bilal turned around silently. As soon as he got into the car, he called his mother. "Mom, maybe we made a mistake. We considered this woman weak, and this girl a burden. But they both turned out to be more human than us." That same night, Saima hugged the girl and said, "Son, this world is cruel, but your mother has not learned to give up. And as long as I am alive, you will never be alone." Several days passed. Bilal did not come, nor did he send any news. Saima tightened her routine. sewing from morning to evening, raising her daughter from evening to night, and the last watch of the night, the silent prayer of a broken woman. One day a voice echoed in the neighborhood. I heard that Bilal's business has collapsed. The mother and son are drowning in debt. Saima heard but said nothing. She only looked at the sky and thought, it is the Lord who holds the oppressed, and shows the oppressor a mirror. 2 days later, an old woman came to Saima. Daughter Rashida Begum is very sick. She is in the hospital. There is no one to visit her. Saima remained silent for a few moments. The same woman who called her unlucky, pushed her, cursed her, was now alone, helpless in bed. But a war had begun inside Saima. On one side, the screams of the past, on the other, the voice of humanity. Finally, she got up, took the baby in her arms and said to Ammaji, I am going to see Rashida Begum. If anyone feels bad, please explain it to me for the sake of Allah. Rashida Begum was lying on the hospital bed with her eyes closed. Her face was yellow, her breathing was labored. Saima sat down quietly nearby and held her hand. Rashida Begum opened her eyes. A blurry scene, but it didn't take long to recognize her. So you've come. Why? To taunt. There was more embarrassment than weakness in her voice. Saima said in a low voice, mothers don't taunt their daughters, and daughters don't leave their mothers alone in their old age. Whoever you were, it's my duty to ask about you. Tears welled up in Rashida Begum's eyes. The woman, who once hated her daughter-in-law's eyes, was crying today, holding her hand. Forgive me, Saima. Maybe I was a bad mother. But I was definitely a very bad mother-in-law. Saima bowed her head and said slowly, you are a mother. And a mother is never bad, she just makes mistakes. At that moment, Bilal was standing at the hospital door. He was seeing a scene he had not expected. The woman he had kicked out of the house. Today she was the support of his mother's prayers. A wound arose in his heart. And a question echoed. Whom did I leave? And who did I hold on to? It was 10 o'clock at night. A cool breeze was blowing through the hospital windows, but Bilal's heart felt strangely warm. As if regret was burning, a fever of remorse was rising. He was sitting by his mother's bed, who had fallen into a deep sleep after Saima left. And that moment was breaking Bilal. The woman I humiliated. Today she held her mother's hand. And me. Where was I? Bilal spent that night lying awake on the hospital bench. And the next day he himself reached the doorstep of Saima's house. When Ammaji opened the door, her eyelids fluttered in surprise. Son, is it you? Bilal said in a low voice. I want to meet Saima. Just once. Ammaji called out to Saima. Saima came out. A clothes rack in her hand, her hair tied, the baby in her lap. Bilal looked at her for a moment. This was the same Saima he used to call weak. But today she had become a mother, a woman, a soldier fighting a war. I want to say something. Bilal's voice did not have the arrogance that Saima recognized. Saima, I know it's too late. Broke you. But I was also shattered. Now if you want you can give the girl to me. Or just forgive me once. So that I can at least forgive myself. Saima took a deep breath and said, Bilal, you left me when there was no one to hold me. You rejected me at the behest of that mother, whom I am now serving. What have you come to ask of me? Forgiveness. I had given that the very day you handed me the divorce papers. Because if I had not forgiven you from my heart, then even today you would be a wound in my heart. You are not in my heart, but in prayer. Bilal lowered his eyes. He had now come to that point, where a man becomes weak, when a woman shows him a mirror. Saima looked at her daughter with love, and said slowly, You are the father, and you will get his right. But my daughter will recognize not only by blood, but by character, who her father is. Bilal shook his head, not daring to say anything, and slowly turned back. His steps were heavy, but his heart was light, because Saima's silent apology had made him human for the first time. The days were changing, and so was Saima's life. In the neighborhood, she was now considered a dignified mother instead of an oppressed wife. She worked hard all day, preparing her daughter for school, and always prayed with all her heart. My daughter should not become a woman who silently endures oppression, but rather, she should become one who silently changes history. One day a letter came from school. Your daughter has a sharp mind, but her fees have not been collected for several months. If possible, arrange it soon. Saima thought for several hours with the letter in her hand. She did not have the fees, but her dreams were very precious. That same evening, Bilal came to her door again, with an envelope in his hand. This is the girl's fee. I want her to get everything that you sacrificed for her. I don't just want to give her the recognition of a father anymore. I want to be a support for her success. Saima looked at the envelope silently. More than the envelope, there was that change in Bilal's eyes. That Saima had once wished for, but never hoped for. You could have come a few days ago. That day when my daughter was sick. That day when I spent many nights on an empty stomach. But you didn't come. And today you came. When I earned everything again with my hard work. Bilal said softly. Yes, I came late. But now I know what you are. And what you have lost and gained. Saima looked at the girl who was sitting in the swing laughing. This girl is my courage. The day you called her unlucky, I died on that day. And then became a mother and was reborn. Bilal lowered his eyes. Saima, if life allows you, can I make a place in that girl's life again? Just a father's place. I have no desire to become a husband, nor any greed for a relationship. I just want permission to walk with her as a father. Saima's eyes moistened, but there was silence on her lips. That silence that was no longer a weakness, but had become a woman's strength. I don't promise, but time will tell. If you are really a father, then the daughter will call you herself. Bilal lowered his head and turned back. But for the first time in his heart there was a light, which might never let him wander in the darkness again. It was morning. Saima got her daughter ready, tied her hair in 2 buns, slung the bag over her shoulder and kissed her on the forehead. Behave well in school today, and whatever is taught, come and tell your mother. The girl smiled and shook her head and said, Mom, you also teach everything. I don't need school that much. Saima laughed with tears in her eyes. But mother wants you to reach that point, where your mother becomes your pride, not an obstacle. The girl went to school. Saima had just put the tea kettle on when there was a knock on the door. When she opened the door, Rashida Begum was standing in front, weak, bent over, and an old shopper in her hand. Saima, I have come to apologize once again. This time not as a mother, nor as a mother-in-law, just as a sinful woman. What I did to you was against humanity. But I want to remove some burden from my heart before I die. Saima looked at her for a few moments, then stepped back and opened the door. Come on, Amma. Perhaps you are tired now too. And my heart has stopped getting tired. Rashida Begum came in, sat down against the wall. This bag was sent by Bilal. The girl's school uniform and a few books. He says that her earnings should be pure, and her duty should be fulfilled. Saima held the bag, as if a soft wave rose in her heart. That night when Bilal came on the phone, for the first time there was not confidence in his voice, but politeness. Saima, thank you. You gave respect to the mother, and a future to the girl. If ever I get the chance to help her with her homework, or be given time to pick her up from school, that's all I ask for. Saima remained silent. Then she said softly, You don't have the right, but maybe I can give you a chance. But remember, this daughter is no longer just a daughter. She is my identity, and the mirror of your conscience. Bilal hung up the phone. But for the first time a prayer came out of his heart. Oh God, the woman I broke. She made me a human being today. Several weeks passed. Bilal would come to pick up the girl outside the school every Friday. Sometimes with a rose in his hand, sometimes with colored pencils, and sometimes just empty hands. But on his face was the restlessness of a father who had been awake for years. The girl had now started talking to Bilal. "Dad, why don't you make me laugh like Mom does?" Bilal couldn't say anything. He would only take a cold breath and say in his heart, "How can I tell you, daughter? Your mom has enabled me to meet you." One day it was Parents' Day at school. The girl said to Saima, "Mom, I want Dad to come with me this time. You won't be angry, will you?" Saima looked at her for a few moments, then smiled slightly and said, "No, son, Mom never gets angry. Whatever she wants, she finds happiness in it." On Parents' Day, Bilal held his daughter's hand, led her up on stage, and as she recited the poem, tears welled up in Bilal's eyes. Saima was watching from a distance. For a moment she remembered that day, when the same Bilal was burning with hatred at the birth of that girl. But today, that girl had become his pride. After the program, Bilal came to Saima. "I didn't do anything without your permission, but now I have a request. I want my presence in my daughter's life to be regular. Not as a husband, not as a decision maker, just like a shadow, which she feels in her moments of happiness, and remembers in her moments of sadness." Saima fixed her eyes on his face. "Bilal, your prayers have changed shape. You have changed, it is visible. But remember, once love is broken, it only molds itself again in the molds of trust. And that mold is made by time, not words." Bilal shook his head. "I will wait, neither for you nor for your daughter, but for the moment of my own forgiveness." That same night, Saima hugged her daughter and said, "Son, if someone gets angry in life, then opening the door is not enough to bring them back. You yourself have to go to that very threshold and bow down. Today your father has learned to bow down. That is why I am opening the door." It was raining. Saima sat by the window, sorting through copies of her daughter's homework. The sound no longer frightened her amid the thunder, but rather brought her peace, as if the Lord were saying, "The storm has passed." There was a knock on the door. It was the same knock, but as soft, shy, and silent as today. The door opened, and Bilal stood there with a closed envelope in his hand. "This is not a letter, nor an apology. Just a few pictures that I secretly took when you were leaving school with a girl on the edge of the street. I didn't have those moments, so I saved them for memory." Saima took the envelope but didn't move from the door. Bilal glanced away and said, "One more thing. If I may, I want to celebrate the girl's birthday myself this time. Simply with your permission and in your presence." Saima was silent for a few moments, then said softly, "I am giving permission once, but only as a father. No speech, no emotional claim. This is the girl's day, not ours." The birthday came. A small hall was rented, a simple cake, a few friends, and a small handwritten card from Bilal. "Daughter, the day you were born, I complained to the Lord. But today I pray for your return every day. If your mother had not forgiven me, then perhaps I would never have been worthy of calling myself a human being. Your father." Saima read the card but said nothing. Just picked up the girl in her arms, and thanked the Lord in her heart. "Oh God, I endured the injustice. But today my daughter stands proudly in front of her father. This is my victory." That night, for the first time, the girl hugged Bilal and said, "Dad, when will you come again?" Tears came out of Bilal's eyes, and he said in a trembling voice, "When you say, then every day." And at that moment, Saima looked at the ceiling and said to the Lord, "Now this story is not just mine, it is that child's, whom I saved by becoming a mother, and time forced me to become a father." The girl's school year had ended. It was exam vacation time, and she was spending the evening with Bilal every day. The park, the air conditioner, the swings, all those moments that had been snatched away years ago were now slowly returning. But Saima, she was still cautious. She would neither let him get too close, nor push him too far, because she knew that a relationship is not built on just closeness, but on trust. One day Bilal came, carrying a piece of paper in his hand. A job offer letter. I have a good job offer in another city. The salary is high, the facilities are good too. I want to shift there. But before I go, I have come to ask you just one thing. Saima asked without lowering her eyes. What do you want to ask? Bilal said softly. Can I take you both with me? I don't want to remarry. I just want to live as a family. I will maintain the relationship as you want. I just want to be involved in every moment of my daughter. Saima remained silent for a few moments. She looked at the wall where the girls' pictures were hung, the story of a mother's hard work. Then she looked at Bilal, the person who had changed over time. But is that change sustainable? Bilal, once a relationship is broken, regret alone is not enough to mend it. Truth, patience, and proof are also needed. If you are truly a father, then wait for your daughter's decision. And if you want to be a husband, then respect my silence, don't test it. Bilal bowed his head. I will wait. For you both. I will stay there as long as you say. That same night, the girl asked Saima, Mom, why does Dad want to take us with him? Saima placed her hand on her daughter's forehead. Son, some people don't change in time. But if they do, then God gives them a second chance. Now the decision is not ours, it is time's. And time definitely decides. Months passed. Bilal had moved to another city, but he would talk to his daughter on video calls every week, help her with her homework, tell her stories, and listen to her prayers before she went to bed in the evening. Saima was surprised. The man who had never looked at his daughter with full eyes was now living for her every moment. But Saima knew that trials are not only about promises, but also about the maturity of time. One day Bilal said on the phone, I am buying a house, small, but clean, quiet, safe. If you want, you can come and see it. The decision to stay will be yours. I will not insist. Saima thought for a while. Then she held her daughter's hand and said, Son, do you want to go with your father? The girl asked in surprise. Mom, will you go with me? Saima didn't let her heart speak, just said softly, maybe we'll see. 2 days later, the two of them arrived at Bilal's new house. A small, beautiful house, white curtains, a bookcase, and a frame on the wall, which held the same picture of her daughter that Saima had taken on her first birthday. Bilal stood at the door, watching them silently. This is your home as long as you want. Even if you don't stay, then this door will never close. Saima felt the atmosphere of the house. For the first time, a house built by a man. She felt safe, not imprisoned. When she returned at night, the girl asked, Mom, was this house nice? Saima said, Yes, very good. But a house is not built with walls. It is built with the heart. Now we have to see if that heart has grown big enough, that the mistakes of the past can be buried in it. Several months passed. Bilal's behavior continued to change. Quiet, gentle, simple. Now he didn't just come to visit the girl on Saturdays, but he would listen to her lessons on video every day, and ask Saima for advice. Saima had a strange conflict in her heart. Should she forget everything and start anew? Or should she just support her from afar and complete these moments? One night, when Saima had put the girl to sleep, there was a light knock on the door. When she opened it, it was Bilal, nothing in his hand, but a prayer in his eyes. Saima, I don't have to make any promises to you. I don't have to swear. I just have to say one sentence today. I don't consider you just a wife. You are the woman who made me a human being. If you say yes once, then I will hold myself to your standards for the rest of my life. Not try to change you to suit me. Saima remained silent for a few moments. Then she slowly walked over and took out an old key from the cupboard and placed it in Bilal's hand. This is the key to the room where my dream was buried on the night of my first wedding. If you want, you can arrange our daughter's happiness in this room. But there is a condition. You will keep the door open, so that if you ever forget, can go again, and you can learn again. Tears flowed from Bilal's eyes. I will never close the door. Neither of my heart, nor of my home. That night the three of them sat down together and ate. The girl laughed and said, Mom, now we are a complete family, right? Saima looked at Bilal, who was bending down and kissing the girl on the cheek. Yes, son. Now we are a family. But remember, this family is not made of blood, but of tolerance, forgiveness, and truth. Saima sat by the window until late at night. She couldn't sleep, but her heart was at peace. She looked up at the sky and said softly, Oh God, I trust in the relationship you have created. Just now, write the piece of my share on the faces of my children.